How you doing? How are you? So today I'm going to show you how to fake a beautiful golden hour and go from this to this while still having total control of your lights and being able to shoot this sunset at midnight without the time crunch of the sun actually setting. So I want to keep in mind through the duration of this that I'm shooting all of this with gear that I have and most of you guys have laying around. And if not, there's always cheaper alternatives to do. Work lights, household lamps, t-shirts, bed sheets, very simple things to get the same look that we're doing here and you'll be able to achieve. So don't worry, don't stress, it's a very DIY, low budget based lighting setup. The goal is always to work with what you have. So in my case, I was shooting on the Blackmagic Pocket 4K with the 18-35 Sigma Art 1.8 lens and the Tiffin Pro Mist 1.8 filter on it. That never leaves my camera. About 95% of my shoots have that Pro Mist filter on it, and no, it is not a sponsor from Tiffin. Just love the thing. It's beautiful. For lighting, I use my Aputure 120D Mark II, which I have here, as my key light, and then I also used a few of Aputure's LS Mini 20s here. They're these little Fresnels. One of them is bicolor, the rest are daylight, and they work really great. They're not the absolute strongest, but they definitely get the job done. So I've got a few of those that I used as well. And then to add some color, I've got these Roscoe color gels that I've got. They're about $25 on Amazon. Super durable, 1x1, just a bunch of different color gels here. So I use those as well. So let's go ahead and dive in on how I got this sunset look. So first, before we even dive into any lighting whatsoever, it's really important to set the frame. So that's what I did here. I placed my wonderful model Sarah right at the end of the table, and I used these candles to act as leading lines, kind of pointing straight to her to draw the attention. And then over her left shoulder, I had that mirror up on the wall, and that acted as adding a lot more depth to the image and reflecting the curtains, which were actually to camera right. It's very important to add depth to any image or any shot that you're getting, because the key to having a cinematic pleasing image to get the eye to travel from the foreground through the middle ground to the background and all the way through the frame. So that's why I placed that mirror there, to just make it look a lot longer. Additionally, I turn the camera a little bit more to the left and rake that wall that you see there on the left side of the frame on camera left, and just add a little bit more depth going down through the room so she didn't feel boxed in that little cubby kind of cutout room that she was in there. Now that we know that adding depth to our image is very, very important, and we've got our frame perfectly set to exactly where we want it, we're in the perfect position to add in our first light. So in this case, I noticed that door with the curtains over it, so I added in my first light, which was the Aputure Mini 20, and I punched that in through the curtain. And I kept the drapes there to add a little bit of texture for when the light hit it, so you can really see the glow of that. And also through the window frame, you got a lot of the silhouette of the individual window panes. But since these lights are very, very cool, they're about 7,200 degrees Kelvin, it took two of the CTO, the color temperature orange gels, to clamp on the front of it to get to that really strong, warm sunset look that we're going for. And then I had these lights maxed out at 100% power because they aren't nearly as strong and powerful as the 120D, which I used as the key light. But when replicating the sun, it's one strong light source. So even though it's coming through two different locations in the house, it's gonna be the same amount of light, the same power light. So I wanted to keep that the same as the key light coming through. Talking about the key light, which was my 120D Mark II, I had it punching through that really large window that she was sitting right next to. And since the Aputures are only 5,600 degrees approximately color temperature, it only took one of those CTO gels to warm it up just to get that really organic sunset looking we're going for. And I had it powered to about, I want to say 50 to 60%, because again, trying to keep it consistent with the other light that I had there maxed out. For light modifiers, I really didn't have anything. I just had the dome disc cone thing that comes with the 120D, and that's what I had actually attached the gel to. So there wasn't anything for diffusion that I had because the sun in theory is a really harsh, strong light. So I kind of wanted to keep that feeling as true and consistent as it could be. So with the light punching through the entire window, a mixture of going through the shears and the window panes that we had mentioned before, the shears kind of softened the light and acted as a thin sense of diffusion because I didn't want it to be crazy, crazy harsh on her face, but it was just soft enough. And then a combination of that and the window panes, they casted a really great shadow and really great texture and character both on her face, her body, and the wall sitting right behind her. Where this mirror really came into play is where you could see the reflection of the curtains, adding a little bit more depth like we were touching on before. So once I got all of that locked in and everything looked super nice and we were really starting to get that look, I noticed that there were a lot of shadows on her indoor side of her face that I really didn't like, because in theory you're gonna have the sun bouncing in the house and it's gonna be bouncing around and putting a lot of fill light there. So I wanted to emulate that by adding one of the 5-in-1 reflector discs that I've got, and I put it to the silver side about 4 feet away from her face, just to bounce and just fill in a little bit of that dark side shadow, because my goal is to always have a very nice, soft, pleasing roll off from highlights over to the shadows in the face. And it just looks a lot softer and smoother and accents skin and makes it just look a little bit more elegant. So to really replicate that sun that's gonna be bouncing through the house is where I had it bouncing off of that diffuser, which was actually just the key light punching through the window off of that onto the face. So no more lights were needed for that. It was just one of those cheap diffusers that you find on Amazon. I chose the silver side over the white side because one, it's a lot more reflective, and the output of the 120D coming through the gel, coming through the window, and then traveling that length, you lose a lot of that power. So the white side just wasn't pushing enough to fill in that side of that shadow side of the face for me. So that's why I chose to go for the silver. Of course, you could flip to the white and maybe push in a little bit closer, but since I was shooting with a really wide frame, I didn't really have that flexibility to move it in as close as I could have. So keep in mind that this is a very DIY setup. I'm trying to do this with what we all have. I just clamped the reflector to the top of a light stand with these clamps that I got no more than $15 at Lowe's. It's a whole clamp set of varying sizes, and it's probably the best thing that I've invested in. So now that we've got that door light there, we've got the key light there, and we just put the bounce there to make her face just look so creamy and buttery and oh so elegant, we're almost there. I was like, I'm already really happy with this frame, and it'll probably do, but there's a few more finishing touches that I feel would really just add to the final product. So that's what I wanted to add here. Of course, everybody loves haze. I took the Halloween fog machine that I have because DIY, and hazers are just so ridiculously expensive. Yeah, they put out a little bit better product, a little bit better quality haze, but with a little bit of waving around and flapping your hands and stuff, spreading that haze to make it look really thin and soft and nice, you get a really great product. But there are a few different purposes for the haze. One thing that looks really cool is when you have harsh, strong light punching through, like sunlight, it adds kind of a sharp beam defining that light and just makes it look a little bit more textured and cool, giving it a little bit more character, but also kind of contrasting that, it does a really good job of softening the light. It's a sense of diffusion, almost going through like a cloud or mist or a softbox, and it really does a great job spreading the light both as fill throughout the room and on your subject's face. But then the other thing is it just adds, it's this weird way to explain it, of texture and character and atmosphere in the shot, and it really just puts the viewer in the shot, and really my main goal is to make the viewer feel what the subject is feeling. It just looks fantastic. It adds that extra kiss of golden hour look, I guess, if you will. So to add to the concept of the viewer feeling exactly what the subject is feeling, what better way to read a book at sunset than to sit there with the window open and having the breeze blow in and hearing the birds chirping, this, that, and the third. One thing I wanted to do was take a fan, sit it on the floor, and just blast it against the wall back to the curtain, just to emulate the wind blowing through a little bit. It adds to the story of everything that's going on, and it makes the viewer feel there a little bit more so, just so they can feel it and have all their senses involved. Now everything is there, everything is perfect, and your shot is great. So let's break that down once more. I started with setting the frame. I've got everything in place. I wanted to add depth by adding that mirror, adding that raking of the wall back into the background to keep her less boxed in. And I use those candles in the table as leading lines pointing all the direction to the subject, being our wonderful model Sarah reading the book. So now once we did that, we decided to add in some lighting. So the first light was that background light punching through the door with the curtain, and warming it up with those 2 color temperature gels, having it on max power just to keep the consistency of the other light that we're gonna add in next. Then we added the 120D blasting through that window, the second window, with just a color temperature orange, and having it at 50-60% to keep the consistency. And that cast a great shadows, great texture, and the nice soft fill light on our subject and on the rest of our scene. From there, to take care of the shadows that were on the dark side of her face, we added in that silver reflector bounce. And that just took care of all the dark shadows, added a really nice roll off from the brights to the darks across her face, making it very pleasing. Then we added the haze. The haze, it adds more character to the shot, some more atmosphere. It creates these light beams for the really harsh light and softens the overall fill light in the room, on the face, on the subject. And then from there, I just wanted to add to the story, add to the feeling, add to the mood. I put that fan there against the wall, blasting back to the curtain just to get that flowy wave of the curtain and really make it feel like it's a summery breeze, the sun is setting, you're reading a book, and everything just feels great, completely peaceful, wonderful, and beautiful. So that wraps everything up. Super easy way to replicate sunset and have total control. Like I said, this was shot at about 11 o'clock at night. And I've used this very, very many times because you're not rushing the sun setting or praying that no clouds go in front of it or the weather changes. You're in a very controlled environment, so you can adjust everything how you want it to look, and it just makes everything a lot easier. It's a lot less of a headache in the end of the day, and it's really just ultimately fun to play with the lights and make something that you see in your head and make it come out perfectly how you see it. I want to thank you for watching. I really hope this helps. If you have any question, leave a comment below. Message me on Instagram, reach out to me. I'm always here to help. I love teaching this kind of stuff. If you like this lighting tutorial or just like the video, leave a comment below of what lighting setups you'd like to see next.